Hello! First of all, I just watched the first two Harry Potter films, and I never realised before, but John Cleese, Nearly Headless Nick, gets respectively 4th and 5th billing. Nearly Headless Nick, John Cleese. He goes Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint, Emma Watson, and Nearly Headless Nick. Whoever your agent is, John Cleese, well done to him, sir. Wow. I don't know why I included that, I needed... So, I wanted to talk about a book I read recently called The Night Circus. Ooh, good book. It's had a lot of criticism. It's a Marmite kind of book. People are really opposed to it, or they really, really like it. On Goodreads and on BookTube, it's been really polarising. A lot of people were saying, wow, this is amazing, it's so new and different and wonderful. Ooh! And then some people have been like, this is a terrible book, it's so slow and it's two-dimensional. So I wanted to just talk about my thoughts and address some of the criticisms, because a lot of what people have said about it, I can see their point. I think it just comes down to readers' preferences, because a slow book isn't necessarily a bad book. Basically, the plot is kind of weird. I'm not going to give too much away. This will be mostly spoiler-free. I might put some in at the end, just because I want to talk about them. So the plot of The Night Circus, by Erin Morgenstern, by the way, her debut novel, is centred around this circus during, like, the Victorian era, late 1800s, early 1900s. It's a circus unlike any other. There are aspects of normal circuses that go in, like toffee apples, tents, acrobatics, etc., but it's much more than that. The circus is described in a lot of detail, and it's meant to be very beautiful, very exquisite, dreamlike. There's acrobats and contortionists, but they're really, really, really good. But it's meant to be this very high-end kind of circus. It moves from place to place mysteriously, it's open from dusk till dawn, and everything is coated in only black and white. But this wondrous place is not just a circus, it is also a venue for a kind of magical duel. There's two magicians who are using real magic to create feats of wonder and intrigue. They kind of create exhibitions in certain tents, and they're sort of judged on how impressive and how beautiful and exquisite they are. It's not a duel like any other, it's not like Harry and Voldemort going at it. They'll take months to create these exhibitions, and then they go on and they have to maintain them using their magical prowess. That's the basic plot. It's a really interesting and different kind of magical book from any other I've read, but just the fact that what they're doing isn't directly fighting each other or causing harm to each other, they're just trying to create beautiful things for people to see and experience, and that's just a really nice thing. It's really well described, and I think that's what sets this book apart from any other. The description is really nice. It's also set in multiple times, which was initially okay. Some of the chapters are set during the past, when they're making the circus and setting it up, and then parts of it are when the circus is up and running. Towards the end, though, I did find it a little bit confusing. Even though each chapter does say when it is set, it's got a date on it, I still found it a bit hard. There's two events that happen in the book, and some of the chapters will dance around that event, and then you're sort of in your head going, is this before that or after that? So that got a little confusing. I had to pay more attention to the date than I thought I would have to. And even though I say that, I mean, it wasn't that bad. Like, if the dates hadn't been there, it would have been like, what is going on? But no, it was generally easy to follow. I appreciated the world building. Like, it's set in this sort of Victorian era, but that's not really important. It's been described as ahistorical. The outside world doesn't really matter that much, because you're talking about the circus and the people in the circus. And there's people outside the circus as well, but they're kind of timeless. I think it was very, very well written. For someone's debut novel, I liked the writing style, and it focuses on multiple people throughout the book, which some people have said is confusing. I found it generally easy to read. I don't think it's that hard. I mean, there are a lot of characters, but generally they're different enough that you can work out who they're talking about. Yeah, and the world building and the descriptions were just really nice. Like, not just about what's in the tents and what's happening in the circus, but also just little details. And you can kind of revel in those little details. Like, they're talking about like a clock at one point, and the clock itself is amazing, and the way it's described, you can kind of imagine it. It is really, really nice. I like the clock a lot. If you haven't read it, you'll be like, come on. But no, seriously, it's a good clock. And it also talks about people's experiences within the circus, how people feel about it. It goes into a lot of detail about people called reviewers, fans of the circus, and they follow it from place to place. And so you get this whole sort of Victorian subculture of people. They go there whenever they can, they talk about it, they send each other letters. I think that was just a nice addition to it. I didn't really need to be in there, but it was just a nice addition. It made it feel more real that there's this kind of fan base in a way. A lot of things that aren't necessarily related to the plot are just described really nicely. Like, you don't need to know what happens in every tent, but it does describe it, and it just gives you a feeling of the experience. So some people have said this book is very slow, and I can kind of see where they're coming from, because overall, sure, not much happens, like compared to other books. I wouldn't say that was bad though. I was enjoying the language being used, I was enjoying the descriptions. There's quite a lot of sort of talk of the emotions of the characters and what they're feeling, and I really enjoyed that. And yeah, this wizard duel is just quite slow, yeah, because it happens over many, many years. I still really enjoyed finding out what each one had done and their response to it, because it was also really nice that when they'd created this exhibit or experience, the other magician was just like, damn, that is good. They talk about how they enjoy each other's work. That was really nice. People have said as well that the love story seemed a bit contrived. I don't think it was at all. I won't really say what the love story is or who it involves. How to say this in a non-spoilery way. The two characters who have the major love story, their love, I think, comes out of their mutual respect initially. So that when they meet and fall in love and actually experience these emotions, it's not out of nowhere, because they know each other really well. I'm not going to say anything else about that because it would give stuff away. I'm going to talk about some stuff in a minute which would be a bit spoilery, so if you haven't read the book, please do. It's one of my top books this year. It was so different and it was refreshing. For me, what made it different was that it was written in a very individual style. Narrative was very different from other things I've read. It was just a refreshingly different kind of fantasy book. There's loads and loads of videos on BookTube, so check them out. I first heard about this book from BookTubers, I think A Clockwork Reader. It just sounded interesting, and it was pretty cheap on Amazon, and I thought, why not? Definitely one of my best books that I've read this year, so I urge you to check it out. So I just wanted to talk about a few things in a bit more detail which are a bit spoilery. Either be prepared for spoilers or stop watching now. Thank you very much for watching up until now. Like, the love story, I think is a completely valid love story, because even though they hadn't met before, they'd judged each other's work and they'd studied each other's works. So they knew about each other and they kind of had this mutual respect. Both of them, even though they didn't really know each other on a personal standpoint, they kind of guessed that from their work. And it's the kind of thing where you study each other so much where this mutual respect and admiration can come from, and I think then that builds into falling in love. It also rounded out the book quite nicely because, yeah, one of them has to die. I preferred the ending where one of them tries to off themselves to save the other one than if one just sort of got burnt up from all the energy. It also introduced this nice dynamic. They were competing for their lives against each other, but they both wanted to survive, but they both, more than that, wanted the other person to survive. I really liked that it was a thing about stamina and focus and being able to not just create wonderful things, but hold everything in your head. I found really callous of Prospero and Alexander that they kind of just accept that that's part of it. And the fact that Marco had this spell where it protected people, but also stopped them from getting older. That's really twisted. That's really twisted and kind of horrible. Initially, I didn't like Marco at all because he'd done that, so I was rooting for Celia pretty much for the entire book. He didn't seem as emotionally involved as Celia for the most part. She seemed a bit more like a rounded character. He was very callous. The fact that he kept Isabel as his sort of girlfriend, that's really cruel. Then he treated her like shit. I didn't really understand what she was doing, in that she was somehow tempering them or like protecting people from their influence, and then she got into her spell and suddenly people were vulnerable. But I still didn't understand, because then no one else seemed to die, so I don't really know what her spell was doing or how it was different after she'd stopped it, apart from the death. I've talked for far too long on this book. It was a really good book. I thought it was really imaginative, really different, so refreshing. So thank you, Erin Morgenstern, and I write more books, because this was so good. If you've read the book and you want to talk about it, let me know in the comments. I'd love to talk to people about this, because it was really good, and I really want to talk to people about it, because it was so refreshing. Thanks very much for watching. You can subscribe, or thumbs up, or comment if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you again very soon. Thanks for watching.